oh my. Put me in, coach, I'm ready to play fantasy. I know I turned 2 in a day, but the lace isn't hot in my veins. I can turn 2 in every way, so I turn to you 2 today and smash plays. I'm prepared to listen. The X-Fippin' whip got me looking way past the pitches. Statistics all that I know, and I know that who is on first, you can say I'm ready to go. I ain't trying to steal second or third, cause I wanna win first. How am I to put all of these numbers to words? I know the terms from A to Z, it's like a gift and a curse. I know the difference between a splitter and a curve, but if I can't put it into points, man, then what's it worth? I need the truth, I need knowledge. Found this podcast with all of it, but what they call it? Turn 2. Turn 2, what it do? Win leagues, catch out. Peace.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Turn 2 podcast. I'm your host, Matt Williams. You can find me on Twitter at MATTWI77IAMS. Joining me on the show, a very special guest, first time on the show. Really needs no introduction, but for anyone not watching on video, you obviously do need an introduction. So the senior fantasy editor over at USA Today, Mr. Steve Gardner, the man, the myth, the legend. Steve, thank you for taking the time for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for the invite, Matt. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure every first-time guest that comes on your show has to comment about that intro and how just rockin', jammin', fantastic it is. So put me in that column.
I get a difference of opinion. Most people
Really?
like it. Nick Pollock, the pitcher list, loved it. Gray Albright from Razzball said that he fell asleep during it because it was so long.
Oh, man. I was moving.
I love it. I love it. It's absolutely fantastic. And I play it every single time. So today on the show, everybody, we're going to be talking about baseball. Spoiler alert. There's a few interesting non-fantasy things. Something interesting happened in Detroit last night we'll talk about. But for the main topic of the show is going to be some early season breakouts. Mostly pitchers, because hitters, I mean, we've gotten to the point where there's enough data for the most part, but for some hitters, but pitchers, I think there's a lot more interesting topics for the pitching. So we're going to talk about some early season breakouts for some starting pitching, whether we believe they're legitimate or not. And we'll talk about a little bit of ask Steve a few questions about some things that have happened so far as early season performance and whether he believes them or not. But first, we're going to jump into some latest news, which the first topic on the latest news is kind of an ongoing story. But last night in the Mets game, we're going to talk about the new baseball. So I want to just say that first. The new baseball, as far as fantasy goes, is depressing the offense. It's keeping home runs down and depressing offense like overall. Although you have occasional like blow up games, like the Cubs scored like 20 runs the other day, something crazy. So I wanted to kind of get your take on the baseball in general, Steve, because I mean, it's twofold. In the very beginning of the year, I believe that Ian Kennedy over on the Diamondbacks, he said that early in the year, they were definitely using one ball. He said that the mud was taking to it. It was very porous. And then it was obvious when they introduced a second ball, and everyone seems to be on board that there is another ball, at least two, because one is slick and it just feels completely different. The New York Mets, my team, they've been hit 18 times. So on top of the ball, some of the balls being different, people are still having trouble with command like they were last year. I mean, way too many people are getting hit. Mets alone, they've been hit in the head like 4 to 5 times. Pete Alonso twice. Someone's going to get seriously injured. Chris Bassett was quoted after the game saying that he thinks there could be several different baseballs. He doesn't even know. And he just, he just kind of voiced his complaints, aired his grievances. But, for everyone listening, they care about fantasy baseball for the most part, Steve. So what is your take on the new baseball and how do you prepare for it? Is there anything you can do? Because we don't know information, and I think it's pretty obvious we're never going to have a clear picture. But, with home runs being down, it obviously affects everyone. Do you go after players with more surefire, no doubt power? Is there anything that you think you can do? Is there anything you have done?
Actually, I don't know. And that's a great answer for for me to come on. And the first thing to say when you ask me a question is, I don't know. But I think that's true for everybody, is that if you are going to have several different kinds of baseballs and nobody knows which ones will be in play in even inning to inning as opposed to game, to where you can adjust. I mean, I think that's one of the things, is that why the pitchers are so upset and they don't like what's going on, because they can't tell. And I think what baseball was telling us, MLB was telling us before the season, is we are going to make things as standard as possible. We are going to have the single baseball, and it may be, a little deflighted or a little less juicy than ever, but it was going to be the same baseball. And we were going to have the humidor in all 30 parks, to where the consistency of the moisture and all of that will be the same. And it seems like we haven't gotten that, at least anecdotally. And I think for that reason, it's really hard to figure out what to do, for us as fantasy players, and for the players. How do you construct your lineup? How do you go about your pitching game plan, that sort of thing? And I think that's where you get to, so much confusion and so many people being upset with what's going on right now. In terms of what the results have been so far, we have to have the big caveat of it's April. And remember that the weather generally is cooler, more conducive for pitchers' conditions than hitters' conditions. And the fact that we didn't start at the beginning of April either, our small April sample size, if we start comparing it to previous Aprils, is going to be even smaller. So those are all things that we have to take into consideration and just say, all right, let's see what the players' actual skills are, the things that they're actually doing, and is that significant? And really, you have to take it on a case by case basis.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You want to do something, you feel like you should,
Right.
but other than anything that you would do is something you kind of should do anyway. Someone was asking me, should I buy low on like high, pure power hitters, like when Framil Reyes was off to a slow start, Jorge Soler? You should do that anyway.
Yes.
So it doesn't
Mhm.
really, like, yes, you should, but it doesn't necessarily change anything. Someone also asked me, like, should I sell high on some of my stud pitchers? Like, if pitching is overall going to be better, like, is it though? The good pitchers are still, I mean, the variance in production is still where you think it would be between the top and bottom. So like I said, it affects everybody, every team in your league. There probably will be a few instances where it does help an occasional hitter here or there, but again, we really
Yeah.
can't tell, so there's nothing you can do. So to everybody, stay the course. We're still in April. We'll see. The hitters getting hit by pitches is an issue. So I think it's an issue Rob Manfred cannot ignore as much as he probably would like to. He probably just sigh of relief every time no one actually gets seriously injured, but it's getting to the point where they may have to do something, at least to help the pitchers get a little more grip on the ball. So we'll see. But yeah, until that happens, there's nothing we can really do.
One of the things about, I'll just say, on the hits by pitches, the Mets certainly have a gripe because they're getting hit more than anybody. But really, you look at league wide, it's still pretty much the same as it was last year. So I wonder if, maybe the Mets, because of their prominence, are making this into something that's bigger than life because it's affecting them, whereas it may not be affecting the Mariners or the Royals or some of the other teams as
Yeah.
much. We'll,
Yeah, no, I
we'll
agree. It's definitely a profile thing, and I also think the fact that so many of the hit by pitches have been in the helmet.
yeah.
I mean, like anything. I mean, the Buster Posey rule at home plate. Things will happen and happen and happen until it happens to the wrong person, and then things
Exactly.
happen. So yeah, when you have a high profile team and a player like Pete Alonso get hit in the head twice, people start to notice. So we'll see. I think something will probably happen. We probably won't know about it. They'll probably still have 3 different balls. I don't know why they just didn't go with the Japanese pre-tack ball. Yu Darvish brought it over. He showed everyone. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, it's basically I have a baseball and it just kind of has like a pre-spray or something on it with a tack material already on the ball.
Yeah.
And they use it over in Japan. So I don't know, maybe something
And they
like
used
that.
it in the Olympics too, didn't they? and I
Yeah.
think it got generally good reviews there.
Yeah. Everyone liked it. Yeah, the hitters had no problem with it. Pitchers had no problem with it. Why aren't we using it? I don't understand.
Yeah.
One hitter that does not seem to be phased by the new baseball is Anthony Rizzo. He had a hat trick yesterday, 3 home runs, albeit at Yankee Stadium. I'm not taking anything away from Anthony Rizzo, but 2 of his home runs were hit at a launch angle of 48 degrees and 37 degrees. The other one, 35. The expected batting average of 180 and 010. 010. I mean, that ball was not going out anywhere but Yankee Stadium, but the Yankees traded for him for a reason. They wanted they traded for Joey Gallo. Not that his power needs any help, but Anthony Rizzo was. You were hoping he'd take advantage of this. He didn't last year like the way you wanted to. They bring him back, and boom, this is what you were kind of hoping to see. So, do you think this is just kind of an early season thing, or do you think we legitimately might be seeing like maybe a career power output? Because hey, I mean, Curtis Granderson, remember what he did in New York? I mean, it doesn't matter what age you are. If your swing is built for that right field porch, magical things can happen. He has 8 home runs on the season.
Yeah, and 7 of those have come at home. So talk about, taking advantage of where you're playing. I personally, I thought this is what Joey Gallo would be when he came to New York. I really thought, even his pop-ups would have a chance of going out. But Joey Gallo is kind of at the other end of the spectrum and having a really horrible start. But yeah, Rizzo, he's hitting the ball hard. I think like a 50% hard hit rate. That puts him in the top 10 in the majors in barrels per plate appearance. And it's a case where he's a veteran hitter. He knows what pitchers are doing, and he knows how he can exploit that, especially when he's playing in Yankee Stadium. So I don't think he's going to go and lead the majors in home runs, but he's certainly proven that that he has the ability to hit them, especially at Yankee Stadium, and he's on a pretty hot streak in terms of his performance and just hitting the ball hard. And when you do that, good things happen.
And you know what? I will say this. I mean, I don't want anyone to get really, you don't want to overreact to anything early in the season, but he could lead the league in home runs. I mean, I like you said, I don't think he's going to, but I don't think this is a sell high situation. I think if you have him, this is a wow. This is something that could certainly continue. We haven't even gotten to the warm weather yet. So yeah, he's probably not leading the league in home runs. Joey Gallo can certainly and probably will still catch him, struggling with his 200 batting average, or if he can manage to get there. But yeah, Anthony Rizzo, I think this is somewhat legitimate, and it's something that we could certainly see a career high in home runs from Anthony Rizzo. Adalberto Mondesi leaves the game with an injured knee. I mean, there's no victory lapping injuries ever. And there's some people out there that like to do it. Why don't we just say this is not a surprise? It's unfortunate to ever see anyone go down. He's an exciting guy. He'd already stolen 5 bases this year. We always wonder what could happen if he could be healthy for an entire year. He stole 43 bases back in 2019, 443 plate appearances. He stole 32 in 2018 with 291 plate appearances. Who knows what he could do? I'm not sure how serious it is. It looks like it's not as bad as people were hoping, but again, knee injury to speedster, not great. But he was off to a slow start at the plate, batting 140 with a 37% strikeout rate.
Yeah.
But as flawed as he is, like one of the, as far as plate discipline, he's one of the worst hitters in baseball. Like, Javier Baez overcomes it. Victor Robles almost did. And then obviously he has not found a way back. But when on the field, Mondesi was able to put up like a 256, 263, 276 batting average for 3 years in a row. Probably, a large help to his speed. He has in those years, he had a BABIP like 350, 357. So what do you do if you have Adalberto Mondesi? One, are you a Mondesi guy, Steve? Because you have one way or the other. You're drafting that speed or you're not. He was giving you the speed. So 140 average or not, I mean, at least he was giving you that. I would think that the batting average would turn around somewhat. His BABIP was 233. It was probably going to bounce back. His expected batting average was still 231. So low BABIP or not, apparently he was hitting to where his level should be. So what do you do with Mondesi now? If you're a Mondesi guy, what do you do with him right now?
I have been on both sides of the fence. And I think back, this is maybe a weakness of mine, but when I see guys do things that Mondesi did at the end of the 2020 season, in September, when he was the most valuable hitter for that month with the power and the stolen bases, it's so, I don't know, intoxicating is the right word, but just to think of what you could get if that guy could stay healthy. I mean, it's the same sort of analogy with Byron Buxton, and things are going awfully well for him this year. But Mondesi, again, the injury situation with him, and the fact that he does have a lot of swing and miss, and that's the real big problem. You talked about the 37% K rate. That's where the issue is with me. And I was all in on him last year because I felt like he could carry that success from 2020, and then boom, the injuries pretty much made it a lost season. So I was avoiding him pretty much everywhere this year, and just for that reason, because once burned, I'm a little bit shyer this season, and so far, I think the bat has been the real disappointment. Obviously, the steals have been great, but yeah, I'm not a big fan going forward.
The yeah, he Mondesi, Alberto Mondesi, we're talking about everybody. He won fantasy championships in 2020. I mean, I don't want to say single-handedly, you got to play the entire season, but it was a short season.
Right.
So yeah,
It was 2
I mean,
months.
yeah, he kind of like put people he probably drug people from like the middle of the standings to a championship. That's how much of an impact he had. I drafted him once last year. I wanted to try something. I took Mike Trout in the first round. I was worried about his speed, just because of the trend we had saw. I took
Right.
Mondesi in the second. I thought if these two stay healthy, it's over. Of course, I didn't do well in that league, as neither of them played very many games. But yeah, it's something to be worried about. I don't have any shares this year. I mean, injuries. I play enough leagues and draft and holds where I usually
Hmm.
try to maybe get at least a couple of a share or two of the really
Hmm.
dynamic guys in case they go off. But yeah, the talk in the offseason with the Royals, we're talking about platooning him, maybe even benching him. There's a lot of things that hadn't happened yet, but yeah, it looks like the injury isn't serious. If he comes back and he gets a spark again, I don't know what you can do. If you believe in him and you believe in him, so there's maybe not a ton of actionable information here. We're not
Yeah.
telling you anything you don't know, but when a speedster like him gets the knee injury, we had to talk about it. So we've
I'll
talked
tell you
about it.
one quick Mondesi note, Matt. You reminded me. I did similar sort of thing in AL Labor last year. I decided that I was going to try and punt batting average, and so Mondesi then with power and speed, I was thinking he's the perfect guy to build around, and I pretty much punted everything in AL Labor last year. Did not work out so well. So yeah, I'm going to back off. And the fact that Nicky Lopez can play shortstop, and Whit Merrifield can play second base, and Bobby Witt Jr. can play third base.
Yes.
If he's not hitting, they don't need to play him every day.
I mean, imagine a punting batting average if these guys all stayed healthy and had solid years. If you had Mondesi, Gallo, Sano,
Mm-hmm.
you just punt it, man. You could do some damage if you punted batting average. Obviously, you need to bang. And if you're punting a category, anybody, I mean, you obviously need to bang on all cylinders mostly everywhere else. But it can be done. One other player who had a monster game yesterday, Willie Adames, a very popular sleeper pick, I guess. I mean, he was always solid in Tampa Bay. He went over in Milwaukee, kind of tore it up when he went over there, and he just seemed like a popular choice this year. Of the shortstop was a very very deep position, very top heavy, and there was like a tier at the very back with like Dansby Swanson, who's having his own strikeout issues, and Willie Adames. He was off to a very very slow start, but yesterday turned it around in a hurry. 4 for 5, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs. So where are your thoughts on Adames? Is this something where you feel you would try to sell high, or is this just like are you a believer in Adames? You just said, well, it's about time. Hopefully, he gets it going here, because I'm an Adames guy. I have a couple of shares here or there. So I'm hoping that this is just the beginning of something. Obviously, we're not getting 2 home runs all the time in a single game, but yeah, what are your thoughts on Willie Adames?
I thought he was a great pick, if especially in deeper leagues, to get at a middle infield spot because of all the great shortstops that we had kind of at the top of the position. I love it. I mean, the difference in the hitter that he was when he left Tampa Bay, and we've heard all about, he couldn't, the backdrop there, the hitting, the batter's eye just made it difficult for him to see the ball. And then he comes to Milwaukee, starts hitting home runs left and right. And this year, kind of continuing that. I think kind of the telling stat for him is that his walk rate just keeps climbing. It after he left Tampa Bay and went to Milwaukee last year, walk rate went up. This year, it's close to 12%. Strikeout rate is down. I mean, those are great indicators. And to me, I think Willy Adames is here to stay and could, he could break into that upper level tier, where the Carlos Correas and guys like that are, fairly easily. And it seems to me he's still, even after maybe last night's game, still flying a little bit under the radar.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the kind of production we saw when he went to Milwaukee, the power was certainly going to be there, but he gives you a little more speed upside than, a Seager or a Correa. They are obviously on another level as far as track record, but the speed helps. So getting up to that level is a little easier, especially at least in Roto. That does it mostly for the latest news, but we're going to talk about one in particular play that happened last night that we just have to talk about. It happened over in Detroit. So why don't we just play a little bit of audio to get everyone caught up.
Line drive right field. Over the glove of Grossman. Larnach had to hold up. He's going to be held there. And the Twins have filled the bases. And now Sano goes towards second. And that forces the runner from second. And now it's thrown away. One run will score. And the Twins are going to win the game.
Wow. If anyone didn't watch this, if anyone didn't watch the video, the Twins were down 4 runs to 3, 9th inning, 2 outs. They had a man on first and third. Miguel Sano's at the plate. He hits a fly ball that should have been caught to Robbie Grossman, goes over his head. He frantically panics. Nice relay throw into Jonathan Schoop, who then throws just one of the most brutal relay throws homes I've ever seen ever. It like one hop 15 feet in front of him to Eric Haas, who had now had a man on third, sitting there, frozen at third. Miguel Sano, who hit the ball, tries to advance to second for some reason, forcing the man at second to try to advance to third, which again, no one has to go anywhere. And Eric Haas, who has the ball, does not need to throw it. He does not need to throw it to third, but for some reason, I don't know if he just didn't see the man on third because he was standing there and he thought that he was trying to get the runner advancing to third out. But either way, he airmails it way into left field, and then the 2 runs come in, and the Twins win the game. Really one of the screwiest plays I've ever seen, Steve. I mean, I put out a tweet that said this is Black Sox type stuff. Some people said Little League, which is also fair, but this is like if you were trying to point shaving, run shaving. Like, this was a little over the top for that. It wasn't even that subtle. I mean, it was that bad. I'm not suggesting that's obviously not what happened, but I mean, these were bad plays. So, man, what do you think? Because not only was this just a horrible play, obviously on the Detroit part who lost, what was up with the base running by the Twins? What were they doing?
There's so many unanswered questions with that, but I will say, in having played in my share of games, whether it's softball or baseball or wiffle ball, anything, stuff happens. And if you get confused and you're not, aware of exactly what's going on, and all sorts of different crazy things that you're not expecting happen, at the same time, your head starts spinning, and it is a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
to be so confused and have no idea what to do. I think these are professionals, but at least 4 people on that diamond on that play were in that situation where they just lost their minds. And listening to the radio call reminds me of, remember the play that the base running play that Ruben Rivera of the Giants made gosh, how long is it? 15 some odd, more than that, maybe years ago. John Miller was on the radio call for the Giants. And I remember listening to that and how John Miller was just so flawless in capturing not only what was going on the diamond, but how crazy everything was. And I think his summation was that has to be the worst base running in the history of baseball. It reminded me of that. It was that crazy. So I have no idea what at least 4 people were thinking, but you won't see it again.
Yeah, you don't want to pile on because, like you said, things happen. You get confused. The exciting, that was such a weird combination of activity, really. That again, I think Eric Haas. I swear, I don't even think he knew that one runner was standing on third was there. I think his eyes were squarely on the guy advancing because he must not have known he was there. Otherwise, why throw it?
Yeah, you just run him back and tag somebody.
I mean, it's kind of like I mean, this was like the Sierra play, like mixed in with the Javier Baez Pirates play from last year. It's all like all this stuff mixed together. It's
the Brett Phillips walk off in the World Series a couple years ago.
And the Luis Castillo missed infield fly. It's like you morph them into a baby, and then you got this play. So yeah, it was unfortunate. But if you haven't seen it, I mean, I have it posted on my Twitter account. You see it anywhere. Just type in Tigers walk off. You will see or Twins walk off, and you will see a video of it, and it was spectacularly horrible. But I mean, it's part of baseball. You hate to see it. Again, everyone, it was very interesting to watch. It's just no matter what you see in baseball, there's always something else. It's like there's always first, which always boggles my mind that you just see all these things all the time. Like, how has that never happened before? And every single year, there's like different things that happen like that. Like the Mets have won their first 6 series of the year for the first time in franchise history, 1962. Which I'll throw that in there because Homer thing.
I'll throw you one more thing too. Talk about going to the ball. You never know what you'll see at the ballpark. I went last week. Went to a Mets game. Was up in New York and went to Mets Giants game, and I had never seen Edwin Diaz's intro music.
Oh, the trumpets.
So that to me, it was like, whoa, check this out. This is really wild. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be something unusual, but go to the ballpark. You'll see something you haven't seen before.
I know it's all baseball's awesome. So getting in, that's the latest news. We were just talking about the Detroit's walk-off nightmare. Early season breakouts. So I said we're going to be talking about a lot of starting pitchers. There's a couple of hitters we'll hit at the end, but some players that are off to a really good start. But in terms of these are pitchers that are taking a step forward that a lot of people maybe had their eye on. Is this something that we think is just the beginning of something greater? Or do we think this is just a solid beginning? The first guy up is Logan Gilbert. Well, I love Gilbert. A lot of people have. He had his struggles last year. I did one of my full breakdowns. If anyone wants to read that, it's still very relevant. Just 2022 player breakdowns. My concern with him from last year is he had an unbelievable changeup. He wasn't throwing as much. He just, young pitcher, wasn't trusting his stuff. Mainly his issue was his fastball. He was not elevating it enough. He was trying to, but I mean, it's it's a sticky situation where you elevate the fastball and you don't elevate it enough. It's a home run, and that's what was happening. It happened to him in spring training. He was just cruising, and all of a sudden, there's just one in particular spring training game. I can't remember. He was just cruising through like 2 innings, and then all of a sudden he couldn't elevate his fastball enough, and he got down like 5 or 7 runs. But he's off to a great start this year. 22 and a third innings, 22 strikeouts, 0.4 ERA, 0.85 WHIP. And everything is looking solid. I mean, his pitch mix is essentially the same. 4-seam slider is kind of what he comes at you with. Overall, his slider hasn't been as dominant as last year, but his location has just been better. And in my opinion, that was his problem. And we've seen it. We'll see hiccups here and there, but I mean, I think Logan Gilbert is breaking out. I think that I kind of was hoping and expecting this. Some people were. So it's easy for me to say that, I think that he is doing this, this is very repeatable, and he is he's staying into games pretty deep. I mean, 22 and a third innings, that's kind of some of the most in the majors right now. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Logan Gilbert, Steve?
Yeah, I liked him coming into this season. Didn't get him really anywhere that I can remember. So that's kind of some FOMO for me. Interesting stat on him: he allowed a run in his first inning of the year and has allowed none since, which is pretty fantastic. I think with him, I look at the fact that his strand rate is at 97%, thanks to all of those zeros that he strung together. Obviously, that's not sustainable, and so his FIP is a lot higher than his ERA. But still, I think what you're talking about, the development, the prospect pedigree, we knew he was going to be good even when he was struggling, and so yeah, I'm definitely on board.
It was tough to get Logan Gilbert this year because in drafts, you were mentioning FOMO. He was going in an interesting area of drafts. This is just NFBC main events. I just wanted to pull up some ADP real quick, and everyone there obviously knows what they're doing. The four pitchers taken in front of him, starting pitching: Sean Manaea, Luis Garcia, Eduardo Rodriguez, Chris Bassett. The ones right after him: Tyler Mahle, Sonny Gray, Pablo Lopez, Michael Kopech. He was going in a very strong area for starting pitching. So not only did you have to, want to select him, but, you had to pick him over a lot of very interesting options as well. And if Nate Eovaldi fell, he was taken only a round before him as well. So there's a lot of guys going in that area, but Logan Gilbert off to a great start. I think he'll continue. Eric Lauer, 13 strikeouts the other day. We didn't see that coming. Last year, his high was 9. He had a cheering section as well. He was a late round guy. A lot of people thought that there was tons of value to be had here. Someone that was kind of buried behind Woodruff, Burns, and Peralta in a really strong Milwaukee rotation. I don't think the strikeouts are obviously going to continue here. The strikeouts will continue, but maybe like at more of a 9K per 9, not like whatever the 11 or 13 he's sitting at right now off the top of my head.
Right.
What are your thoughts on Lauer? Because 26 years old, there certainly is plenty of reason to believe that he could kind of turn it on a little bit. He's throwing the four-seam fastball a little less this year, and he's throwing his curveball now 22%. It was at 14.5, and he's kind of throwing an even mix as his number 2 curve, slider, and cutter, and he's having some really good success with it. It looks like he kind of found a nice sweet spot for his pitch mix, so it's definitely possible he takes a step forward like everyone was hoping for. But what do you think that step forward could look like? Right now, he's sitting at 16 1/3 innings, 23 strikeouts. Again, that is helped by 13 strikeout game, but 2.20 ERA, 104 WHIP. Yeah, what do you think of Eric Lauer going forward? Is he a guy you'd want to sell high if anyone's buying into this extreme start, or do you think he's just a solid hold?
I think that he's somebody that came on my radar kind of later in draft season. And the one thing with him is, at least so far this season, you mentioned the pitch mix, maybe throwing the fastball less, but it makes it more effective. And he's gained, a mile and a half almost miles per hour on the fastball from last year, 2.3 miles per hour from 2020. So he's getting the extra velocity. That makes that a better pitch. That makes his other pitches that much more effective. So yeah, I think he's a hold for right now. And I like the Brewers. Obviously, you're playing in the NL Central. There's some nice matchups there. So I'm kind of on board with Eric Lauer.
Yeah, I agree. He's a hold. I think that if you were going to try to trade him, you probably wouldn't get enough in return to even make it worth your while. So even if even if there is some profit to be had, I think you're better off holding on to him. At worst case scenario, I think he's a solid pitcher, but you never know. You might have something special here, so you might as well hold.
Not a lot of name value, I guess.
Yes.
That's kind of the trading currency right now at this point in the season. You've got your stats that you can say, but if you're trying to trade a player, somebody could say, oh, well, it's early. I'm not buying into that, but name value, I think, like you could probably trade Logan Gilbert for a whole lot, because people believe that and see the stats and everything. So you've got both of those. But Eric Lauer, I think people are just like, meh, I'm not going to give you much.
Well, and there's one player, that was Eric Lauer. One player you could certainly trade right now that didn't really have the cheering section preseason. There was certainly some, but for how he's performing right now, Kyle Wright of the Braves It's on a different level of what people I
Mhm.
think were hoping for. 17 innings, 26 strikeouts, 106 ERA, 0.76 whip. He's kind of at the top of the league in everything you want to see. 39.4 K percentage, top 5% in the
Yeah.
league. Only a 3% walk rate. I mean, about as elite as you want to see. His expected WOBA right now is only 213. No one expects that to continue, but plenty of people may actually be expecting him to kind of turn in ace-like numbers. So this is an interesting early season decision, because if you are a team that maybe looks like you maybe were hit with injuries, you could really look to you really need a bat. He is someone you could Kyle Wright is someone you could trade right now and probably get a decent return. The only question is, do you want to do it?
Yeah.
Because he looks really, really legitimate right now. So you kind of, this is like I said, this is an interesting early season decision, because I think everyone knows that it looks pretty legitimate, but he's off to such a fire start. It depends on how much can you get. So it's that gamble. Like, do I give up this guy? And like, everyone always doesn't want to lose a trade, doesn't want to embarrass themselves. You never want to give up the guy who's going to give you that monster season. So what are your thoughts on that? Just general decision making of giving up that like hot starter to try to get a return, because it's hard to pull the trigger on, but more often than not, it's the right decision, because you're technically, on most players, especially earlier round ones, your view of them shouldn't really change too much this early in the year. So it's perfect to go after some struggling hitters early. So again, but more specifically on Kyle Wright, what are your thoughts on him? And what are your thoughts on just the conundrum of trying to trade away someone off to such an amazing start?
Yeah, I think Kyle Wright is a great example of those early season chips that you can cash in, because I don't think anybody paid hardly anything for him, because he wasn't really drafted in most leagues unless you're really, really deep. He didn't have a rotation spot, and then he comes in and lights the world on fire. And it's like, okay, I've got this lottery ticket. It's like I don't know, you got a futures bet or something, and you're 4/5 of the way there. Do you cash that in and say, I'm not going to ride this the whole way, when the payoff, if you do, is huge. And I think one of the things we have to remember is that Kyle Wright does have the prospect pedigree. I mean, he was a first round pick in 2017. He had the great outing in the world, game 4 of the World Series. He came in through 4 innings plus of 1-run ball against the Astros, and he has shown that he can do this sort of thing. But 26-2 strikeout to walk rate, swinging strike rate of 16.7%, which is fantastic. I mean, those numbers, you can't fake that. And so for those reasons, I was one of those people in one of my leagues. I was able to pick him up off the waiver wire in week 1, and I'm not trading him. I guess I could explore that, but I'm really enjoying the fact that I have a pitcher who has been, one of the best in everything so far this early in the season.
If you had Kyle Wright and you have the opportunity to trade him for, I'm going to start at a higher level and I'm going to go a little more expensive after that. 1-for-1, you were offered Tyler Mahle. No interest?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I don't think so either. So let's go a little more. I mean, preseason, that was a slam dunk. But at least I'm just trying to generate, give everyone a baseline of where we think we are. Jose Barrios. I think that is actually the fair line, which is why I kind of drew it here.
Yeah.
I think that's where you have to think about it, and that's where it's difficult. The brain says this is an accept. You must take Jose Barrios, but you don't want to do it.
Exactly. I mean, and you think about, Jose Barrios going through the American League East, and having to face the Rays and the Red Sox and the Yankees. Do you want to stress out about that all those times that he's going to face those teams, while Kyle Wright is facing the Nationals and maybe the Marlins and teams like that? That's a tough call. And you're right. Your brain says, that's kind of a no-brainer. and yet I don't know that I'd be able to pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, it's tough, right? For everyone listening, I mean, you want to say it's fantasy baseball. There's some people that play it that are really good that do not even watch baseball. I don't understand how people do that. Baseball is awesome, but they do it because you just remove the names from the back of the jerseys and you're just playing math. This is, after all, a math game. You're looking at how can someone have changed your mind so much in less than a month where you would be turning down that trade. But emotions certainly get involved here. You get invested in a player, especially if you're the one who has Wright. Everyone overvalues their own players. Right. They're your babies. You don't want to give them up. Yeah, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. It's a no-brainer to accept, and I wouldn't do it. But such as fantasy baseball. I mean, where are you leaning? I get the feeling you wouldn't do it either.
I don't think I could. And Barrios was going in 5th round, something like that in mixed leagues, and trade him. You wouldn't want him for a guy you picked up off the waiver wire. It sounds ridiculous on the face of it, but our brains are funny things. And,
all right, we're gonna push it one. I'm gonna push it one step further, which I think is a step too far. Robbie Ray. I would take Robbie Ray.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, his slider is struggling. He only has his 2-pitch mix, but you can argue that since he has a 2-pitch mix and his slider's not working, that's a worry. I would argue also, though, that it's as soon as he gets more of a feel for that.
What happens when he does? Yeah.
Yeah, that exactly. And he hasn't had terrible results so far. The strikeouts just haven't been there, which is bizarre. And they're coming back. They just are. So, but I mean, the fact that you even have to think about it, I mean, I guess gives you a good idea of the value Kyle Wright has right now.
The Cy Young Award winner from last year versus a waiver wire pickup.
And people, you got to think about it.
And you have to think about it.
So again, for everyone listening to Kyle Wright, you heard us say that we wouldn't want Jose Barrios, but it kind of shows you no matter how good he's doing, that is the kind of value he has right now. So if you're struggling, or if you have some injuries, some long-term ones, and you need
an excess of pitching.
Yeah, exactly. You can. I mean, we're going pitcher to pitcher. If you need a hitter, it's the opposite side. You can just see what kind of value you can get here. So, by no means sell low. Get your money's worth. If there's an entire league out there, someone's going to be in love with Kyle Wright.
Absolutely.
If you have the means to move him, he's worth a lot right now. Someone who's not worth a lot but off to a great start is Merrill Kelly. He had a cheering section in the preseason. There was people that were kind of hopeful for him, at least in the deep leagues and 12-team leagues. Obviously, he's not someone that should be rostered preseason, but right now, 21 1/3, 22 strikeouts, 1.69 ERA. He does have a 1.27 WHIP. He has about an 8% walk rate right now, 24.7 K rate. Perfectly accessible pitcher for any kind of 15-team league. He's a great guy to have on there. Where do you assess his value for 12-team leagues? If anyone's in there in a little of the more shallow formats, or I guess the more popular one, 12-team, is Merrill Kelly someone you feel should be rostered in all leagues? Which, when I say that, everyone, I want to reiterate, I'll get a lot of DMs. Oh, should I drop so-and-so for him? It doesn't mean you have to roster him. I do feel that there's at least one team in your league. So when you say should be rostered in all formats, that doesn't necessarily mean you, if you have a great pitching staff. But in general, do you think that Merrill Kelly is someone that is a must roster right now in 12 teams?
And with those leagues too, I mean, the last spots on your roster should be ones that you turn over and try and grab the hot hand. So I agree. Merrill Kelly certainly fits that category because, what if he can continue? I mean, you definitely want to at least take a flyer on him if you can just pick him up for free. The thing that concerns me with him, though, is he's never really been a strikeout pitcher throughout his career. And this year he has been. So his swinging strike rate is around 10% right now. Which is considerably lower than some of the other pitchers that we've talked about already.
The league average is around 11.4 for everyone listening for swinging strike rate. I think the league average is 11.4.
Yeah, and he's allowed no home runs in 4 starts already this season. That's partly because of a 50% ground ball rate, which is not is higher than he usually has. So I think there are a lot of signs that point to him overachieving right now. But again, he's certainly rosterable, and if you can pick him up and get that's another thing too. The baseball forecaster, Ron Chandler's baseball forecaster, there's an excerpt in there, little blurb that talks about pitchers who are pitching well and are on a streak of pitching well, that generally they will continue to do that. And if you could pick up a guy, maybe he's on a hot streak, and you get 2 or 3 more good starts before you get a bad start, that's beneficial to you. And especially in leagues where you're churning the bottom of your roster, go ahead and make those spots work for you. Get as much of whatever you can out of them, and then go on to the next guy. I think Merrill Kelly certainly fits into that kind of category.
I'll say one thing. He's off to a start that he's not going to continue as far as on the surface results. 1.69 ERA is not happening. 3.44 ERA is his expected ERA, I should say. That I can buy. Like you said, he doesn't give up a ton of hard contact. He doesn't give up home runs, which is great. Prevents blowups. That's what you want it from a back end pitcher, right? If you throw him out there, you just don't want him to get destroyed. He had a 23.2% K rate in 2020. This year, 24.7. Last year, his best pitch as far as swing and miss was his changeup. Only threw it as his 4th pitch. Now it's his 2nd one, throwing it 22.9% of the time, along with his fastball, 26.8% for the fastball, 22.9% for the changeup, which has a 36.4% whiff rate. So, I mean, hey, if you have a good pitch, throw it more, right? That's what the Marlins do. With
perfect sense.
So plus fastball changeup. I mean, the year is 2052, and fastball changeup combo still dominates. It's like the most simple thing. And then he's throwing that cutter third at 19.9% with a 27% whiff rate. I think last year it was fastball, sinker, curveball, which is more inducive to just weak contact. But fastball, changeup, cutter. I mean, you're throwing things up there with similar speeds. You're kind of talking about 92, 91, 88, where you have different movement on all of them. And so I kind of buy into that he's going to get more strikeouts. But again, maybe over the entire season, a little less than 9K per 9. But if you have enough volume, like, Max Fried, who pitches to weak contact, you can get a lot of strikeouts in roto. Even not being a strikeout pitcher, just because you throw enough innings to just accumulate them. So I think that could be a poor man's, a homeless man's version of some of those guys.
Adam Wainwright was that guy for me, who
absolutely.
I would look to get, in this year's drafts.
That's what people wanted out of like Marcus Stroman. So, I mean, this is, I think, a pretty legitimate guy. I think it's someone that you should take a look at. Like you said, if nothing else, pick him up. If it turns around in a bad way, then you can let him go.
He is a Diamondback, so that things could go sideways.
They're actually not as horrible. I mean, they're I picked them to be the biggest turnaround this year, but that's kind of cheating because they could be the worst team in baseball and still have the biggest turnaround.
Right. The Rangers were my pick on that, and so same sort of theory.
So that's Merrill Kelly. Moving on, next is Tarik Skubal, who he's someone I was in on. I got too many shares early because I drafted in the offseason, like in November. So I got so many early shares and I kind of tailed off, but now I kind of wish I went more in on. 25% strikeout rate, kind of actually low for what you maybe were hoping for. 1.6% walk rate. That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
His command looks so much better. He's locating his fastball so much better. So it's, his whiff stuff, his swing and miss stuff isn't necessarily what you want to see, but he looks like he has more of a plan. Whereas last year he was so desperate to add another secondary pitch. Last year he threw a 4-seam at certain points, not at the same time. Tarik Skubal threw a 4-seam fastball, a slider, a sinker, a changeup, a curveball, a split finger, and a cutter. He's at least honed that in a little bit, and he's throwing mostly 4-seam, slider, sinker, changeup. But so far, I kind of buy into everything we're seeing here. there are blowups in his future, in my opinion. But what are your thoughts on Tarik Skubal? Do you think that this is a breakout we're seeing? Because across the board, strikeouts less, there's less walks, there's weaker contact. It's just kind of everything you want to see out of him early in the season you've seen.
Yeah, I think I underrated him in my preseason rankings because I wasn't getting him anywhere. And so far, the results are great. I will say, though, he's not going very deep into games. He hasn't so far. And his last 2 starts, he's been at Kansas City and faced Colorado at home. So you can kind of say, I think we need to, in analyzing all of these pitchers who've only had a few starts, get to check out the opposition, because you're going to do better against some teams than you may against others. The big thing with Skubal, though, no home runs allowed so far in his 4 starts, or 3 or 4 starts. And last year and the year before that allowed over 2 homers per 9. So that's the real key. If he can suppress home runs and not get hurt by the big innings, then I think he can take a nice leap forward. Otherwise, we could be in for the regression monster to come and get him when he starts facing some offenses that can hit the ball out of the ballpark.
Yes, absolutely. And again, early this season, I know I keep citing ERA and WHIP. They're like worthless to cite this early. But again, what else am I going to tell you? We've been citing some of the stuff behind. But yeah, the low walks and the low home runs are the things to like there. There's nothing totally actionable here. Really nothing. Because if someone drafted Skubal, they believed in him, they're not trading him. So, I mean, there's nothing to go. But I do think there is some legitimacy here. You brought up baseball, Baseball HQ, the forecaster. Something I remember, I don't have this off the top of my head, I don't have my guide right in front of me, but something that really stood out as I was looking for a reason to believe in him, and I do my own breakdowns. And then I read their little blurb. They always do their for some players, they have like the up of what they feel their upside. Yep. And I believe for him, it was like a 3.5 ERA and like maybe like something like 15 wins, and they had him for like 200 strikeouts. And I'm like, I can buy that. I mean, worst case scenario, I think I'm getting strikeouts. It's almost the reason I took Robbie Ray last year. I don't believe anyone who says they thought that what was going to happen last year actually happened, no matter who they are. You drafted them for strikeouts and you hope for better. And that's kind of what I was hoping for Skubal. And as the draft season went on, he just got a little too expensive. So I stopped drafting him because he wasn't going like where Ray was, because he had a lot of helium. But I do buy it, but I believe everything Steve said is completely true, where, let's see how he does when he has some people that can fight back, pick on someone his own size. So Tarik Skubal, interesting guy so far. Joe Ryan, another guy with immense cheering section as well over on the Twins. I've actually bet the over on his early season early season strikeout props almost every time he's out there. He's out there again today. 16 strikeouts though, 16 innings, 1.69 ERA, 0.88 WHIP. He looks good. He's walking 8.3% though. His expected ERA is about double what what his current line is. What are you expecting out of Joe Ryan, who looks, if nothing else, looks like a steal for the Twins for a half a season of Nelson Cruz last year?
Yeah, I had Joe Ryan and Tarik Skubal about the same. Maybe Ryan was a little higher in my preseason rankings, and he's one of those guys that I kind of like because he's better than the sum of his parts. You look at everything, 92 mile an hour fastball. You're like, oh, okay, that's all right, but it's not overpowering. But yet he gets the job done. He gets the swinging strikes, above average in terms of that rate. So far this year, I think his batting average on balls in play is below 200. So he's overachieving there. But, this is a kind of guy who can do something like that. Maybe not a BABIP that low, but can overperform. And I kind of liken him to Brad Radke, from the Twins from years past. Just better than he should be. And right now that's what Ryan is.
I like Ryan. Not much. I haven't seen much of him as far as watching him live, which I'm going to try to make a point to do that today. Looking at his pitch mix early on, he's basically 4-seam slider. and the slider's working really well for him. 42.9% whiff rate. His curveball, he isn't throwing a ton. He's basically using as just a weapon against left-handed batters, but he's having tremendous success with it. Only 8.4% of the time, and actually mirrors perfectly with his fastball. For anyone listening who's not really familiar with that, it's like out of the hand. It's coming at you with the same spin, right out of the hand, but they just kind of break. One breaks entirely differently. So I
stuff
think
that's hard to measure,
it's hard to measure. So it's something like I want to keep an eye on, but again, it's tough for actionable information because the people who drafted Joe Ryan still have him. He started off well. It's hard to pry those guys away. One last guy, again, I don't know what I'm talking about with that actionable information here, is Tyler Mcgill. I'm a Mets fan, so I can't be totally unbiased here, but I told everyone to pick this guy up last year in like May when he was still in like Double-A, because I thought he would be coming. That was more of an injury concern thing for deeper formats. I didn't expect what we're currently seeing. He's picked up some velocity on his fastball. He's changed his mechanics, and he's a kind of like a big lumbering dude. Now he's hanging out with Scherzer and DeGrom, getting pointers in spring training and earlier in the season. And he is bringing the ball now an average of 96, which if you kind of, you ever listen to like Eno Saris, if you've done study on Yusei Kikuchi, it's there's that kind of shelf, right? At like 93, 94, 95. Once you can cross from like 94 to 96, the results are like so much better. And Tyler Mcgill has made it into that next area. And he can touch like 99 at times. So it's his secondary stuff looks great so far. He kind of works in his changeup and slider. Changeup is something he just developed last year. Looks good. Nick Pollock actually comped him to Brandon Woodruff, someone where he thought if he could just have that nice mid 90s fastball, and just like average or above secondaries, he can kind of like come at you and dominate. And that's kind of the way it looks so far. I mean, am I wrong here? I got my rose-colored glasses on. I like what I see. Big dude, bringing solid mechanics, got a nice 3-pitch mix. He looks legitimate, and I'm not sure I would be looking to move him in any kind of a buy or any kind of a sell high situation.
Yeah, I'm with you. And what you said right at the top about him, just imagine being a young pitcher and being able to hang out with Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer and learn from those guys through osmosis or whatever. That's got to be fantastic for a young pitcher. And if you've got talent to be able to kind of put some of those things into play, I think that's a wonderful situation for him. And again, like Kyle Wright, because he didn't have a spot in the rotation, at least when a lot of drafts were going on, because we thought DeGrom would be healthy. He's almost like, free, and he's on your roster, and now he's doing great. So I think the fact that he's got, 22 strikeouts and 3 walks and has shown that amount of control is fantastic. And the Mets are playing well behind him. And that's why you get, 3 wins in your starts, because you've got a good defensive team behind you and you've got a good offensive team behind you. So things are lining up awfully well. And the other thing too, one other thing I noticed is that his success against left-handed batters this year is what's kind of taken him to the next level. That's the major difference that I saw. And that could be something that developed from talking with DeGrom and Scherzer. I mean, that to me seems like something you could be able to learn from guys that do it really well. How should I attack these left-handed guys that have worn me out in previous at bats? How can I get better against them? He's done that so far this season.
Yeah, last year he was working on his changeup. Like I said, it's a pitch he developed at the high minors, and he was working on it every step of the way. He kind of threw it to everybody, 50-50 mix, righties and lefties. This year, 9 so far, he's thrown to righties, 65 to lefties. He has identified it as a weapon versus left-handed pitching, and he's working his slider more versus right-handers. And yeah, it's obviously working very well. And on top of, I said, this is Tyler Mcgill we're talking about. He did gain that extra velocity, and not just that, it's his actual efficiency on his fastball. His spin, his active spin was 90% last year. It's 96. It's actually resulted in like less drop, which means more rise, more, this is what you want to see on a fastball. It's coming off, you're coming off an elevated position. Everybody, you want the fastball to kind of look like it's rising towards the hitter. And that's exactly what we're seeing more of. So he would actually be a buy high for me. Cause I mean, you got it all. I, the beholder of your league, I feel like Kyle Wright maybe has too much helium where his cost may be too much, but Tyler Mcgill, he doesn't have the pedigree Wright did. So I think that there's still something in the back of people's minds where there's certain people. I mean, if a Mets fan has him, you're not getting him. But if it's someone else, that I think that there's an opportunity here to actually give them more than what they paid for him in a draft, but you still make out ahead. I mean, buying high is tricky, but I feel like Mcgill may actually fall into that category. How do you feel about like buying high in general? Because it's not something people do often, but I think it's something that's worth looking into.
Obviously, you have to pick your spots, and you have to really like a player. And I think Mcgill is one of those guys. I'm with you there. I think Mcgill is somebody that we've, as a collective industry, may have overlooked, possibly because he didn't have that, guaranteed spot in the rotation. He was the sixth guy, but yeah, I don't think they're booting him from this rotation anytime soon.
No. I think he's safe. So we're running a little long, so I'm going to skip a couple of hitters, and we're going to go to the last part of our segment real quick. Just some quick questions for Steve. It's just, do you believe it? And it's pretty much, do you believe in several things I want to ask you, kind of get his quick thoughts. So the question number one, do you believe that Cody Bellinger is back?
I want to believe, but the hard hit rate, he's like in the 92nd percentile with hard hit rate. Problem with Bellinger for me is just the swing and miss. 32.4% K rate this year, which is double what it was in his MVP year. I don't think he's all the way back. He's not going to sink you, but I'm concerned still.
Yeah. So not much actionable you can do there. There's some people that may be looking to buy, but if someone drafted him, they're probably not about to let him go. Do you believe that Kyle Gibson is this good? The caveat being, we saw him be this good last year. Early, right. He added that cutter. He worked with the slider more. He got traded over to Philly. He wasn't as good in the second half, but again, we don't know what that had to do with. It could have just been him just wearing down. But he's someone who gets innings, and he's off to another fantastic start. So, Steve, do you believe that Kyle Gibson is this good?
I'm still skeptical. His fastball is down nearly a mile per hour from last year. And that's early in April. Some pitchers, I guess, get a dead arm. But I don't know. The results have been great. I don't know that I believe that they will continue.
My friend John Legeza, MLB Moving Averages, we have a few shared teams together, and he kept trying to push Kyle Gibson on me. And I was like you, or I was so skeptical. I didn't want him. I didn't want him at all. And now I'm like, he's just throwing it in my face. Should have gotten more of them. So anyway, that's Kyle Gibson. Steve, do you believe that Whit Merrifield will turn it around? Before you answer, caveat, I don't think anyone thinks he's going to bat 127. I don't mean, no. I mean, do you think he's going to, how about this? Do you think he'll return value? Because I jumped ship on him like 2 years ago. I saw the aging curve, the expected batting average, everything started to fall. He's someone who needs like 700 plate appearances kind of to return value. So I was proven wrong then, but I mean, it's certainly coming for him. He's currently got a -7 weighted runs created plus. I don't think anyone believes that is going to occur, but quite unproductive. Do you think Whit Merrifield, do you think he'll return value? Do you believe he is a buy low? What do you think of Whit Merrifield?
Yes and yes. I think that the volume is going to be there, and he has been remarkably injury-free throughout his career. The Royals continue to lead him off. He's their best option in that number one spot, and batting average on balls in play 151. I think that says an awful lot about why he's hitting 127. So yeah, I think better days are definitely in store for him.
I wasn't sure what you were going to say there, but I will say I've watched a lot of Royals games. I don't know why. Maybe Bobby Witt Jr. I just happen to see a lot of Royals games. I've seen Whit Merrifield at the plate. Looks good to me. Like Steve mentioned the batting average for balls in play. He's hitting the ball. I've seen him hit it hard. He looks just as sharp as always at the plate. So I agree. Do you believe that Bobby Dalbec is droppable? He was someone that was a high helium guy, didn't really affect his ADP much, still went at the back end of drafts. So people aren't losing much. There are hot players to be brought in, and you need to kind of rotate the back end. So if you're in a shallower format, he hasn't looked great. Tristan Cassis looks fantastic in the minors.
Yeah.
You got to worry about that too. If if I needed a hitter and Lamont Wade's coming off the IL and I have an opportunity to swap them out, I'm thinking about doing it. And this is someone who believed in Bobby Dalbec, and I thought he had potential 40+ home run power. So do you believe that Bobby Dalbec is droppable?
Yeah. I think in shallower leagues, yes. And the fact that Tristan Casas is on the way, maybe a lot closer than we may know, that definitely there's nowhere else really that Dalbec can play. Speaking of which, we were talking about those the baseball forecaster blurbs. I think Bobby Dalbec was one of those upside guys, and his upside was 50 home runs.
Oh.
So you see something like that, and you're like, whoa, all right then. But yeah,
by the way, he can hit 5 home runs in the next 3 days. So it's really early.
Easily.
So
yeah.
You got to make these decisions though. So that's Bobby Dalbec. Do you believe that Robbie Ray is a buy low?
I think so. I mean, we talked a little bit about him earlier, and I was kind of out on Robbie Ray in draft season because the price was too high, and his strand rate from last year was ridiculous, some like 80% 90% or something like that. So I wasn't going to get him at price. But if his value has dropped to the point where you're offering me or I can offer you something for him, I'll consider it. I'll definitely consider it because better things. I think he's certainly better than he's shown in the early going.
All right, that's Robbie Ray. And then the last question, which is maybe it's difficult as Kyle Wright. This is the Kyle Wright equivalent of hitting. Do you believe that Seiya Suzuki is a sell high? I won't go into my feelings here. I will merely state that his current, let me get this right. His current weighted runs created plus is 206. He's batting 327, which is, I mean, in the first couple of weeks, he was batting like over 400. He's batting 327, 463, 635 with 4 home runs and a stolen base. He's coming a little bit back down to earth now. So I guess now is decision time. Is Seiya Suzuki a sell high?
For me, no. I'm going to hang on to him and ride this wave because I think one of the things that doing a deep dive on him in the preseason, the plate discipline is outstanding. It's continued as a major leaguer. The power is there. We haven't seen a whole lot of speed from him yet, but he could steal some bases. Maybe there's a little bit more room for upside there. So if you need to sell high, go ahead. But I'm holding and going to take the benefits of what he's going to do all season long.
He's such a fun player to watch.
Yes.
I would have, it's hard, especially if you did draft him. I will say I have 0 shares. I didn't know what to make of him, which is kind of my policy. If there's too many question marks, I do not draft you. And his ADP also shifted so much. It depended room to room. I didn't know when to take him. I didn't take him or like Ramon Laureano because I don't know how anyone feels about him in this, when anyone's going to jump in and grab him. Luckily I passed them both up and took Michael Conforto. Worked out great for me. So yeah, a bad call on my part. But yeah, if I had Suzuki, I wouldn't be looking to let him go unless someone did blow me away. Because I mean, there could obviously be someone who wants him way more than you do, which is kind of the last piece of advice I can give anyone for early season trades.
Maybe a 2-for-1,
Yeah, or like everyone's available. It does not matter who you like and dislike on your own team. The whole idea is if someone offers you more for a player than they're worth to you, you accept. So everyone's a buy, everyone's a sell high if someone's willing to buy them for more than they're worth. And I think that is something that a lot of people maybe don't necessarily take advantage of much. Where if a player's off to a hot start, sometimes just go if you especially pay attention in like auction leagues. If someone was like bidding a guy up, you take note of who's interested because you never know. Might be able to make your team better even by trading a player you don't want to.
Yep, indeed. And it's funny because Gray Albright and I in NL Tout Wars got into a bidding war over Suzuki, and it reached. I went to 28, and he went 29, and that's where it went out. But so yeah, I was definitely in on him, but Gray just wanted him more.
That's the way it goes sometimes. I love auction leagues, by the way. Everyone who, if you haven't done one, try one next year. They're great in much better in person, but still, if you want to do online, still fantastic. You can build any team you want. I mean, what's cooler than that? Just be dedicated to taking a few hours out of your day,
Right.
and it'll take a while, but it's fantastic. That'll do it for the Turn 2 podcast today. Steve, thank you so much for joining me, taking the time. Not that you really need to kind of plug anything. Everyone knows who you are, but kind of let everyone know like kind of where they can follow you. Do you have any like kind of upcoming projects, anything you would like the audience to know, something they should follow? Kind of anything interesting you want to, some parting words of wisdom?
I don't have a whole lot of words of wisdom that we haven't covered in the last hour or anything like that. But yeah, remember it's early and things can change terribly quickly. So I'll probably be writing a little bit more about that sort of stuff in my column in USA Today Sports Weekly. You can find it at fantasy.usatoday.com, and you can check me out on Twitter. I'm at Steve A. Gardner.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, thank you for everyone for listening to the Turn 2 podcast. We'll be back next week. Be sure to, if you love the show, make sure you are subscribed, leave a review. Tell us, give us an honest review of what you think really helps the show. Love to hear what you want to hear more of, want to hear less of. So yeah, make sure to do all that. And yeah, like and subscribe on YouTube as well. We do these live. Occasionally we'll just do some question and answer shows so you can come in and join the conversation live. So I'm your host, Matt Williams. Thank you for listening to Turn 2. We'll see you next week, everybody.